Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Erickson Live, a community edition. So today, in a way, it's just me, but then again, it's me and it's all of you. So we don't have a specific guest today, but instead I'm looking for feedback and input from all of you because our topic today is Erickson's approach to coach training. And spoiler ahead of time, a lot about Erickson's approach to coach training is around empowering the learner, empowering you to create the best journey for yourself and to do that with each other, with your fellow learners. And so, what better way to talk about that than doing a poll, getting your voices heard, making you a part of this episode. So, I don't only have one guest, I have many guests from around the world. So, if you haven't voted yet, if you haven't taken the poll yet, there is a link in the description of this video. And it's polleverywhere.com/Erickson Coaching 508. I think that part is random. The idea is that you, first of all, you read what other people have written and what other options there already are, and you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or you just leave it as it is. But the more you give thumbs up and thumbs down, the more we can really differentiate what's good and what is really amazing. What are some of the many good ways Erickson does coach training differently? Or well, doesn't really have to compare to anything else. It's just how is it doing it well? And what are the absolute best ways? What is it that makes Erickson's coaching approach absolutely unique and brings the most value? Obviously, in order to participate in that, it would be good if you have already taken the art and science of coaching so that you have an informed opinion on this. So, with that being said, get this part out of the way. If you are interested in learning more, apart from this episode, if after this episode you're interested in learning more about Erickson coaching, don't just want to hear about it, you want to experience it, then I can highly recommend Experience Coach Training Online. The next iterations take place next week is one at 6 p.m. Pacific time. That is for many people in the world a little tricky. But then on 12th November, you have an edition at 7 a.m. and I'm guessing that's by then Pacific Standard Time. I live here in Kenya at the equator. We don't change our time, so I don't have to deal with that usually. But you'll figure it out. Just sign up via the link in the description or on erickson.edu and they'll tell you exactly when it is. But with that out of the way, I'm thinking let's go through the items that people nominated, the qualities of Erickson's coach training that people really find special. And I can react a little bit to that. I can tell you a little bit what I think about that. And I haven't given everybody much time to vote yet, because to be quite honest, as I was preparing this episode, that idea of involving everybody and doing a poll, that came to me relatively late in the game. So what I'm thinking is I'll explain the different items to you now, and then I will give you a week to vote, and so that we have the final tally in about a week. And then I'll do a video of the top 10 Erickson elements to coach training, the top 10 elements of Erickson's approach to coach training. And that might not be a live video, that might be something a little more edited. We might do that as a YouTube premiere, live premiere. So keep your eyes peeled for that next week. Let's jump into this idea. And so let me figure out the workflow. Oh, by the way, obviously, if you're watching us live, and even if you're not watching us live, please do let me know. Interesting. The buttons did something different than I expected. Please do let me know where you're watching us from. Where are you joining us from? And also, when have you taken the art and science of coaching? What year are you from? What cohort are you from? How recent is your experience with Erickson coaching? And I'd love to hear that and see that. Let me know. So let's get started on this. The first one is one that I put in there, and I'm guessing I like it more as a facilitator than students like it. It got downvoted a little bit, and what I really like is that we have what I called meaningful lesson times. So if you've read books like Deep Work, for example, you know that it takes us a while in order to really concentrate on something. If we just spend 10 minutes on something, or if we spend 6 times 10 minutes on something, that's not even close to being the same thing as working in a concentrated manner on something for 60 minutes straight. And so I really appreciate that we have many different formats in which we deliver our training, but it's usually at least 3 hours time. And that sounds like a lot and it sounds huge, but I can tell you it flies by so very, very quickly. Right now I'm doing a little bit of a different format where it's 4 hours, and again, it just flies by. And that's because of some reasons of what we're talking about later. It's not just listening for 3 hours to somebody like me droning on and talking, I can promise you that. And but I'm guessing that people want kind of to get there as fast as possible, right? But with coaching, you just got to put in the time. You have to create the space and the room, and there has to be a certain atmosphere to it. And I'm pretty proud of that, that we're doing that. And I think that's honestly the only way to do it. I don't think you could do these lessons and go in as deep as you would in in 1 hour increments or something like that. Somebody wrote training for an embodied positive outlook on humans. That is quite beautiful. I'm to be 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure what it means, but it sounds like that we are really holding. It sounds like it's related to the Erickson principles, that we are really holding that people do have all the qualities all the resources they need inside of themselves, and that you do take that on. It's not just something that you've heard about, but it's something that you actually carry with you and that you then embody going forward. As I'm talking through it, it makes sense to me. Probably makes sense to you if you've taken the course. So thank you for that contribution. Opportunities to refresh. Yes, so of course, when the training windows are as long, opportunities to refresh are important, and we want the mind to be fresh, to be happy. We are quite well versed in how does the brain react during training, and how do we manage the brain's capacities and resources in a way that you can get the most out of the training. And it's not just about taking breaks, it's also about mixing things up and doing different kinds of exercises. We'll talk more about that in a minute when we get to more of these elements. Geographical spread, possibility to study different languages. Yes, so we have many different partners, business partners around the world that bring Erickson to all these different countries, and very often also in different languages. Of course, the deepest kind of roster of facilitators we have in English, but I myself am able to facilitate in 3 languages, and we have many people like me that are able to facilitate in at least 2 languages, and have materials in different languages. And it really helps, I can tell you, to learn coaching already, or at least to execute coaching, do coaching in 2 different languages, because you will notice it is almost an entirely different skill set. Coaching in English, to me, comes a lot more easily than coaching in German. There is these slight, subtle cultural differences where even if you translate it perfectly, it's not enough to translate the words. You have to translate the cultural context. You have to put in some softeners and explain a little bit of what you mean sometimes. Because in German, these concepts that we have in coaching sometimes can sound a little flowery. I don't know. Can sound a little... it's hard to explain. If you know... So recently, somebody was telling me about how they started to coach in Georgian. Pretty sure that's similar there. There are certain cultures that like to think of themselves as no nonsense, And coaching is very good for that, but you need to explain it properly. And that is almost, like I said, an entirely skill set in and of itself. So I would almost encourage people to, if you take all 4 modules, take at least one in a different language, or at least get the materials in a different language. And definitely when you go and you do practice outside of class, definitely try it in English and in your native language, because it will accelerate your learning and it will especially deepen your learning. Yeah. So we have some people chiming in. We have Collins joining us from Nairobi, and he's currently in Module 4. So he definitely knows what he's talking about. CJ is from Chandigarh. I'm probably butchering, I'm so sorry. And he's done Erickson, he's done the Art and Science of Coaching in February 2014. I'm so glad that you're still in touch with us. And Tyler says, Bandler addressed this. And I have, to be honest, not quite enough an idea of what you're talking about, because I'm not seeing any comment from any Bandler, but let me know if you want to clarify. I'm happy to put that here on the air. What else do we have? An atmosphere of vulnerability and trust. That's something that's really, really important to me that I try to model. So obviously when we do breakouts and we go through these subjects where we coach each other and it's very personal, the only way that could possibly work is if we completely and implicitly trust each other. If we know that nothing that is said inside of class will kind of leave class, and we go quite deep quite quickly, and we talk about pretty meaningful things pretty quickly. I'm struggling to kind of put this into context without giving away some of the later elements. But obviously, we're talking about real things in coach training. There, I'll give it away. One of the higher elements is we don't role play in Erickson. We don't pretend, because there is so much that goes on in our subconscious mind when we get coached. Coaching is, I don't want to say exhausting, but it's intense. We draw on so much of our resources, and that goes so much deeper than just our conscious mind. And if we try to pretend and we role play something and we think, what would our character say? It doesn't have the same depth. It doesn't have the same level of feedback that the coach in training will get from you when they coach you. And so I get it all the time that people say, wow, I just shared something in a breakout that I haven't even shared with my spouse. Or I haven't even shared that with some of my closest friends, or I haven't talked about this in decades. And that's not because we force them or something like that. It's just because that's what happens. That's what comes out. That's what that atmosphere of vulnerability and trust engenders in people, and that's pretty amazing, honestly. And it also will pay into our number one element. So Tyler is clarifying. Richard Bandler, I'm guessing, if it's something about German, addressed specifically German differences in hypnosis. He nearly said it's impossible. Ooh, that sounds a little glum. Hypnosis impossible in German. That's interesting. I've had some guided meditations. I've never had one in German. I'll have to try that out and get back to you, Tyler. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, what's next? And again, if you haven't voted yet, the link is in the description. The votes will update as we speak, so please go for it. And it's open for another week after this airs live. Amazing tools and space to experience transformation. Yes. This is also kind of spoiling a little bit of what's coming later, but it's not just about coaching. It's also about going through a transformation ourselves. I won't say more about that right now. We'll talk more about that later. The people Erickson trainings attract are incredible and inspiring. That they are. They really, really are. I am constantly in awe and so humble, and I feel very, very cliche blessed that I get to work with so many amazing people. And some of these people just, I have no idea how they do it, how they fit this training into their busy lives. I have one particular student in mind. She has also been a guest on Erickson Live, but there are people that get up at 5 in the morning to do this training. There are people that stay up until 2 in the morning to do this training, and that's not because we don't offer many different time slots. Again, that will also come up, but just because they don't have other time slots during the day, because they're very busy, because they're parents, because they're entrepreneurs, because they have busy jobs. And so in order to do this training, it's just either do it when you're supposed to be sleeping, or not do it at all. And they decide to go for it and to do it. And that is, like I said, very, very humbling, this amount of trust for somebody like me. I'm not just talking about me, but any facilitator, that trust that we will bring value that justifies that sacrifice and that investment on learners' part, on your part. So that is really, really amazing. And the other people, the other learners, are a big part of what makes Erickson training so worthwhile. Because it is we can mention the law of attraction here, and it doesn't quite matter whether you think it's a hard law or whether it's a quirky thing that's based on anecdotal evidence. But it really is the case that sometimes lightning strikes, and there's groups that are especially amazing. I really had one of those examples very recently. But in any case, the people that are interested in what Erickson has to offer always have an interesting story to tell. I knew a person that once told me, there is no uninteresting New Yorker. Go to any person in New York and ask them what their life story is, and they will tell you something. They will knock your socks off. And I feel the exact same way about Erickson. There is no uninteresting Ericksonian. Everybody who comes to Erickson has an interesting story to tell and has an inspiring reason to be here, and has a mission that they want to be equipped for. And that just rubs off on you. That just inspires you to give your best and to help even more people and to stay in touch. And this is personally one of my favorite elements of the training at Erickson. Aika is saying, hello from Istanbul, Turkey. I'm in the ACTP process, just finished the training program. Okay, glad that you're joining us, Aika. Thank you for letting us know. So many time slots are available. Yes, I hinted at that before. Every time zone is served, and you're also seeing that when I'm talking about the Experience Coach Training webinar. You see, there's one iteration at 6 p.m. Pacific time and one at 7 a.m. Pacific time, so that you really can't spread it out much wider. But then the different modules, there's many more iterations of the modules than there is of the webinar. So we have different rhythms. I forgot to mention that. So you have the option of doing it once a week, of doing it twice a week. And then it might be Mondays and Thursdays, it might be Tuesdays and Fridays, it might just be Wednesdays. Then there's partners that do it in a style that is very closely related to how we are usually doing it when we do it on site, which to my knowledge we're not. I think we're planning to start that again. But anyway, which is 4 days per module. So if you're one of those people that's very, very busy, sometimes it's easier to carve 4 whole days out of your life, especially if 2 of those are on the weekend, than 3 hours every week. And so those are all the different opportunities. And then those different rhythms also serve different time slots. So there is something really for everybody, in a way that if you prefer to do it after work in the evening, you can do that. If you do it kind of while you're getting started at work, you could do it during the lunch break, an extended lunch break. Usually all of those are probably available. And that's very helpful, just to have these logistical things in the back. This I mentioned before, no role plays. Strictly no role plays. And sometimes people are surprised by that, but it's essential. I was talking about it a little bit before. It's just essential so that we get the real effect of coaching for you as a coachee and for the coach that is training coaching. But especially when you hear these powerful questions, there's almost no way to distance yourself from them. They are creating an open loop that your brain is just jumping at and just wants to complete. And it is just so powerful. I feel very intensely about this. I don't know how to put it in more eloquent terms, so I'll probably just continue. But it's a very, very important aspect of the coach training. Diverse learning perspectives with tangible methods and thought-provoking models. Yeah. Thank you for contributing that one. So yeah, we do look at things, we love in coaching, obviously, to look at things from different perspectives, and to have different learning, to serve different learning styles, and to put ourselves in different learning methods. And yeah, the methods that we teach, obviously, and Richard was talking about that about a month ago. If you haven't seen that, just the second to last stream before this one, the one before Lyra's, very, very much recommend that if you want to know what Erickson coaching is all about. Not so much Erickson coach training, but what is the approach to coaching. That's super, super thoughtful. And thought-provoking models. It is the case that a lot of people come out of the course and say, wow, I have never seen the world like this. And then what I love about the online modality is that you do it once or twice a week, and you have the opportunity to try it out in real life and to look at things and to pay attention to things that you haven't paid attention to before. And then you come back to class and you realize, oh, yes, I can totally see how this conversation took place on the logical levels, or I can totally see how certain brain areas of my partner were engaging there and kind of prompting certain actions and that sort of thing. So you go through life looking at these things differently, and yeah, waking up to certain things that are just utterly fascinating. Okay, not quite sure what to do with this one. So I had an amazing group recently. I'm supposing that this is one of you guys writing that there. So maybe to chunk up a little bit and to make it a little wider, I think we have amazing facilitators, present company excluded. But seriously, I am very lucky. I feel very lucky to be allowed to count myself among that group of amazing individuals who not only are extremely proficient at coaching and have such a variety of styles even, because maybe I'll mention that later. Erickson's not about creating Erickson drones, but have different styles even within the Erickson approach, and have amazing life stories. For one example, look at the episode we did with Gabi. It was in March. It was one of the first ones. Might have been in February. If you're watching the replay on YouTube, I will put the link here. There will be a card here, and you can go to that episode right away. And it's just, the facilitators live this. It's not something that we just teach. It's something that we are. And that only makes sense if you have taken the course, I think. And I just know when I was going through the course as a student, when I was helping out as a teaching assistant, I felt so lucky. I still do whenever I get to meet other facilitators at the World Game or what have you. Yeah, I don't know. It's just take it from me. Erickson facilitators in general are very special people. Again, I'm not quite saying that about myself, but the other ones definitely. An interactive online academy with videos, demos, and course materials accessible after the training for 3 months. I have a strong idea of who might have written this one. Yeah, so it's not just in class that the training takes place. It's also between classes. So in order to keep the class time also to a manageable time, we are making use of the fact that the ICF, the International Coach Federation, also allows for parts of the training to be asynchronous. So we don't have to be in the room for everything at the same time, because there will be moments when we just need to do some download and some knowledge transfer, right? We'll just have to explain some things. And that can happen on everybody's own time. So we have recorded some portions of classes where it's really just talking, or like giving information, creating a picture on a flip chart, or doing a demonstration, although there are also live demonstrations. And that can then happen when everybody has the best time. And then there's also discussions in blogs, and group work, etc., that takes place on the platform. And it's really a quite a nice complement, because you don't just get one facilitator's style and opinions, etc., but through watching the videos, you also get to see even more. And obviously, every coach has a different style, and every coach has a different biography that, to some extent, influences and impacts how they coach. And we just recorded a whole new slew of demos, so there will be even more videos available going forward pretty soon than there already are. Yeah. And that goes hand in hand with the meaningful interaction and engagement between lessons on the online platform. That's basically what I was just talking about. There is something called the propinquity effect. And not quite sure it applies 100% scientifically, but to me it makes sense. Let me explain. The propinquity effect is describing a phenomenon that the more often you see a person, the more likely you are to start to like them. Because you start getting used to them, they become a part of your life, of your habits, of your routine in a way, and you start to like them because they're familiar. And to me, the transfer that I would make is that also applies to learning. If you've learned another language, you'll know that checking in with something every day for 5 minutes is much more powerful than doing 1 hour once a week. And that's because just, firing up that part of the brain and kind of getting in that mind space is something that takes that takes a bit of time, and that helps to integrate. So the more often you reflect on something, the better you integrate it. And that's why that works really nicely, I think. Experience in professional trainers. Yes, I was talking about that before. And I think, again, it's not just, of course, that's important. That's really, really important. But it's not just about that. It's also the whole personality aspect, I think, that they bring into it. Every trainer makes this subject material their own. And I think that's wonderful. Variety of coaching tools and processes. Yes, that's what you want, right? That's kind of the necessary condition that has to be fulfilled. I want to learn about coaching, and I don't just want to learn about the history or what the theory of coaching. I want to learn concretely, what can I do? What do I do when? If a client has this and this problem, what can I think about of what exercises we do with them? What processes do I go through with them? So yeah, that efficacy has to be there. Aha. Active learning experiences, flipped classroom, learners teaching other learners, whatever you want to call it. This one is really important. We learn most by teaching. And that's a bit of a tragedy in many, many courses. If the teacher is the one taking the most out of the class, and the people that are actually paying are getting less than the person that is getting paid, there is from brain scans, we know that if you read something, a certain part of the brain lights up. If you listen to something, another part of the brain lights up. If you recall something, yet a different part of the brain lights up. But if you teach somebody, you're doing all of those things at once. And it's like a firework up there in terms of electric activity, because you are not just reading it and consuming it and saying, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But if you want to convey that to some other person, you are most likely also putting yourself in their shoes, considering what do they already know, what do they need to know, what's most relevant to them. And this kind of dissociating, this getting out of your own perspective and considering it from a whole bunch of different angles, that just helps to integrate it and to make that material much more your own than it would otherwise be. So this is a big part of what we do. And that is also why those long seeming course modules don't feel as long, nearly as long when you're in the class, because you come and you prepare something, you research something, you prepare something as a team, and that can be it can be a role play in that case, because it's like a demo, a scripted demo in a way, or it doesn't have to be scripted actually. It could just be a presentation. You can do a PowerPoint. You can. What I really love doing is sending people to find pictures, because if you find a picture that embodies or that symbolizes a certain idea, that is one step closer to creating a metaphor for it, and that is really, really powerful. And look out for Marilyn's training on metaphors and coaching. That is also coming up very, very soon. Go to erickson.edu to find that. I'm definitely going to be participating in that. You could theoretically create a song about the concept that you're trying to teach, or you can facilitate a group discussion. It's your time as a teacher. Yeah, so I'm stepping back completely, and you're facilitating that part of the learning. And obviously your other learners are counting on you, and it's always fun because you're doing it in teams. And it's a big part, I think, of what makes Erickson's approach very, very special. Okay, somebody else voted for meaningful interaction. So as I said, the votes are coming in as we speak. We also saw this one. Facilitators modeling a coach approach as they train, not just in exercises, but as a way of being. Yeah, and beyond what I already said about this, coaching is obviously different from other helping professions like therapy, like consulting, like mentoring, and also like training. But what is really fascinating is how much you can infuse these other professions with a coaching spirit. You can take a coaching attitude and put that into training. And that then results in something like the active learning experiences, because we hold that learners already have a lot of the resources that they need inside of them. Adult learning in general also does. So people that come to us already have a wealth of experience. And that's not necessarily predicated on age. We just had somebody in our course that was, sorry, I don't quite remember, 18, 19, something along those lines, just starting college. It was such a valuable and amazing and mature member of the learning community. So I'm not talking about everybody comes in and everybody's a CEO or everybody has like 20 years of industry experience. That's not what I mean. But everybody has valuable ideas to share and has expertise in something. And we really want to leverage that. We would be really stupid if we didn't. And it's not just about us as Erickson dumping all the information on you, but it's also you sharing that with each other. And that's why I was earlier so emotional about Erickson attracts amazing, amazing people. And this idea is part of it. And it's also sometimes not giving you a complete straight answer when you ask a question, like, what does this mean? When do you do this? When do you do that? But this classic thing of, what do you think the answer is? Which I can tell you in New York doesn't land that well. But it's part of the plan, right? Having people in discomfort. As coaches, our job is not to always have our clients be completely comfortable, because how are they going to grow that way? And the same is true in the coach training. You are going to be stretched. You are going to leave your comfort zone. There are times when by design you get into a little bit of overwhelm. But you have all the resources in order to climb your way out of that and to kind of make it work. It's just a necessary part of the process. You need to kind of take possession of the knowledge. I can tell you about it all day long, but you really need to claim it as your own and to integrate it into your worldview. And that only happens when you are profoundly uncomfortable with it for a while, and you really make it work. I could go into the stages of learning here. That's part of module 1. But if after, 3 or 4 sessions, you feel like, wow, this is a lot. I'm trying to keep it all in mind at the same time, but it's a lot. Well, that means it's working. If you feel overwhelmed and if you feel like it's hard, then that means you're really engaging with the material. If you felt like it was easy the whole time, you probably are not putting enough energy and enough attention into it. But that kind of valley of despair is part on the way to the summit, to coaching mastery. Oh, people might be voting. Yeah, this one I'm going to skip for now because it's going to come up at the end as well. Our amazing teaching assistants and everything they do. Yes. And to be honest, I put this one because it's very important to me and it really needs to be said. I myself am an avid learner and I buy a lot of courses online. I participate in a lot of courses and some of them are really, really expensive. And never, ever have I seen anything comparable to what the teaching assistants do at Erickson. Notice, TA stands for teaching assistant, not for technical assistant. If you're lucky, in other courses, you do get technical assistants where, yes, they take care of the technology, and our teaching assistants do that as well to allow the learners and the facilitator to not, at least the larger group and the facilitator to not have to be bothered if somebody says, I can't hear anything, and then everything stops, right? That doesn't happen at Erickson because we can take care of that in the background because we have somebody taking care of that. But our teaching assistants are coaches in their own right. All of them have taken the art and science of coaching several times with different facilitators, with different groups. All of them are coaches in their own right, successful coaches that have their own business or are internal somewhere in an organization. And they are such a valuable resource. And you basically get 2 facilitators for the price of 1. And it is very nice to be able to throw to a teaching assistant and say, what's your experience on this? Or what would you like to add? Yeah, so they're not overbearing, but they can always complement and add something that the facilitator might have overlooked in the heat of the moment. And they are also a very important connection piece, a bridge between the facilitator and the class. Again, excluding myself here, but sometimes facilitators can be so successful and so good at coaching that following them to some people can become a little bit of a challenge in some instances. Like, I'm not throwing any shade at fellow facilitators here at all, but just what I notice as a teaching assistant and what I always encourage my teaching assistants to do is sometimes having a beginner's lens and being closer to the situation that the learners are in is really valuable in translating some things and saying, look, this is how it will feel after a while. And if, like, in starting out, you need to do this and this and this, right? So it adds a different, it adds a different perspective, and it's so valuable. So at this point, very many thank yous to our amazing teaching assistants, because you guys are and ladies are a big part, I think, again, of what makes Erickson's coach training unique. This, to me, is also one of the most important parts, personally. Yes, this is also one of those that you really want to look out for. So even if you watch this, you're deciding on a school, maybe you're deciding between Erickson and somebody else, whatever you decide, we wish you all the success and peace and happiness. But please do make sure that the school that you choose is accredited by the ICF, because otherwise you probably are not getting your money's worth. Accredited by the ICF, in our case, means it's a so-called ACTP. It's an accredited coach training program. And without going into all the different paths of the ICF and all the different minutiae there, that basically means you get everything from one hand, and it's easy to get accredited with the ICF. You just do everything that we put in front of you. You go to the ICF, plus, of course, the practical coach training, the coach practice hours, plus then the coach knowledge assessment, but everything that has to do with the coach training component. You go to the ICF and they say, what provider did you go through? And you say Erickson, they say, okay, great, here you go. This is the next step. They don't ask you any questions or anything like that. If you go through portfolio paths or something like that, you have to do all kinds of things where you have to prove that this is up to the ICF standards, et cetera, and that's just more work than it needs to be. And as a result of being an ACTP, every lesson emphasizes various ICF core competencies. They just updated them. I mean, that has been a process that has been going on for a while, but Erickson has already fully integrated the new ICF core competencies into all our lessons, and so you're fully set up for anything that the ICF might throw at you. Yeah, and then I think is this the okay. So, motivation to coach while still learning. Yes. I usually tell my students that by lesson 7, so let's say 2/3 of the way through module 1, that's a really good moment to jump right in and to advertise and to look for people and say, I do coaching now. I am learning to be a coach. Who wants to try my services? Who wants to help me on my journey? And that's not because they, by this point, know everything there is to know, but our version of coach training, not explicitly, but this is how I'm making sense of it for myself. There is a design principle in game designing. Video games should be easy to pick up and hard to master. And I think that's exactly what we're doing with coaching. We're making it easy to pick up. You can get going after very little instruction, and you can add real value to people's life. But when you really go below the surface and you get all the different lenses and the different models of how to look at your client and how that might inspire your next question, that becomes really hard to master in a good way. It becomes really deep, really intricate, and that's then what the rest of the modules are for. So I think it's the best of both worlds in that sense. And so after 6-7 sessions, I really encourage people to also do tryouts and to practice with each other, but to actually go out and coach real people in the real world. Not necessarily spouse and family, because that is harder than coaching somebody that you know a little bit. But yeah, coaching. And you are allowed by the ICF to do a certain contingent of your hours as pro bono, so not having them paid. But the more you start to value and to realize the value that you're bringing to clients, without saying, well, I'm just starting out, the better for your learning journey, the better for the ambition that you have for yourself and for your client. And it's easier to coach people that pay because they are more on board. They're more in a customer mindset than people that are just there because it's free. But that's another discussion. And I think we're coming up on the last one here. Yes, it's so much more than just coach training. This has made me a better person. And as you might have noticed, I can talk a lot about things. Let me have somebody else help me out and say this in a probably much more eloquent way than I could.
Hi, it's Manana here. My coaching journey started with Erickson Coaching International, and honestly, I cannot imagine this journey without this amazing school and all the people who work there. Not only studying at Erickson Coaching International gives you a huge opportunities to become an ICF accredited coach, but it also makes you a better person, a better version of yourself. Classes are always filled with meaningful interactions, practices, and a powerful, inspiring style of teaching. And of course, I must say a word about my facilitator and TA who made the learning process unforgettable, and they constantly were working on making a trust-based atmosphere for us. Fabian and Ishlai, thank you so much for this, and of course, I am beyond grateful and thankful to Marilyn Atkinson, who founded this amazing school and who surrounded herself with these amazing people and amazing facilitators and teachers. Thank you so much for this. It was and it is still my honor to be part of this amazing school.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manana. Manana is from Georgia, which is a beautiful country, by the way. We're not talking about the state in the US. If you would like to share your experiences in a similar way, if you'd like to be featured on Erickson Live, by the way, feel free to submit something like this, and I will play it here, because I think it's always much more helpful to hear from people that are going through this or have gone through it, that don't have an agenda. Obviously, I have a bit of an agenda when I talk to you about these things, right? Besides, honestly, being convinced about it, but there is that agenda that is not going away, and yeah, Manana is just sharing that because she believes in it and wants you to know about it. So this is an interesting one because nobody, I think, invests in the course and buys the course because of this, but so many people afterwards look back and say, wow, that's the main outcome that I got from it, and that's the most valuable thing that I got from it. So it's a tricky one at that, because I can tell you about it, but it might not. Well, let me give you a glimpse into the future. You invest in this training, and you really want to get some methods, and you want to get some tools, and you want to enrich what you're already doing with throwing a little bit of coaching in there. And coaching has been a buzzword for a while, and so you kind of want to know what everybody's talking about, and so you're doing that coach training thing, and then maybe you get the certificate, and then you have that on your CV, and you have that if companies ask if you have an ACC, and you have that, and that's okay, and that's what you're there for, and that's fine, that's completely legitimate. And then you come and you experience everything that we just outlined and that people voted on, and you start seeing the world in a different way. You start showing up for your loved ones and for your colleagues in a different way. You get coaching, so much coaching, and you get clarity in so many areas in your life that you didn't even know you needed clarity in. And it just changes things. There's a before and an after in terms of taking this training. And it's a significant difference. And it's an investment in yourself, not just in your career and your skills, but it's an investment in yourself, in your relationship with yourself, in getting to know yourself, getting to know the other people around you so much better. If that sounds interesting to you at all, that to me, and apparently to many other people, is the core, it's the heart of what makes this course so special. Let me see if I missed anything. No, that's the top one. So, like I said, I will leave this open for a week. So let's leave it open until October 27th and keep voting. And then if the results differ somewhat significantly, then I'll make a separate video, much shorter and just with the results, not about what everything means, in order to have just kind of a nice product to thank you everybody for pitching in and for kind of letting us know what you really appreciate and maybe helping some other people make a decision in terms of their learning journey. Oh, and then there's one thing that I wanted to mention that's not on here because it's the exact opposite of this training changed me as a person. It's something that might be really interesting or important when you start out, when you make the decision, oh, I'm going to invest in this. But afterwards, you're not even going to think about it anymore, that was important to you ever. It's that when you sign up with Erickson Canada, you can do module 1 and you have a money back guarantee. So if you say, okay, I'm doing it, guys, this is nice, but it's not what I was expecting. It's not what I need right now. I'm not going to continue, and this isn't that helpful to me right now. Could I please have my money back? Then yes, you can absolutely have your money back. I think that's important because the money doesn't do us much good if you go around and say you have a bad experience. If you get your money back, you say, honestly, like, it wasn't for me, but I know 3 other people, and I know those are good people. They gave me my money back, and I barely even asked. And that's not just something that's on the box in order to get you to buy. That's something that actually is lived. So, yeah, if that makes a difference at all, know that is an option. So you're not really taking that much of a risk. Of course, there's a time investment, but at least the monetary investment is something that you can recoup. All right. So if you're still with me, kudos to you for being with me for almost an hour, nerding out and rambling about these things that I hold so dearly. Let me thank you by reading you one of my favorite stories, one that encompasses quite a few of the things, not in terms of tools, not in terms of direct correlation, but in terms of spirit. And it's a story about Milton Erickson, and it's from this book that is honestly one of my favorite books ever. It's written by, big surprise, by Milton Atkinson, Creating Transformational Metaphors. And I read this every time I need some inspiration for a course or life or what have you. And this is something that I like to read to people who haven't experienced Erickson yet, but where I want to distill in 3 minutes what is Erickson about. This is about Erickson, the man, Milton Erickson, who was the inspiration for Milton Atkinson to found Erickson Coaching International, to give that name to the company, and to develop that particular style of coaching. And it goes a little bit into his biography and into the challenges that he overcame that very much shaped his approach to life and to his career. He was a psychotherapist, also a hypnotherapist, one of the pioneers of that field, as I understand, and that all came from his personal experiences. So understanding those experiences can help you understand the Ericksonian spirit to a certain degree. So here we go. The story is called Learning How to Walk. Milton Erickson used to tell a powerful story about his first days after becoming ill with polio as a boy. And you can tell I've read this story quite a few times. He discussed the inspiring idea he conceived that changed his life in a very positive way. Being ill became a springboard to some of his greatest questions and lessons. Imagine being a 15-year-old boy who went to bed one evening with a sore throat and woke up 3 days later after nearly dying from polio. What would it be like for you if you discovered you could only move your eyes? That you were in fact paralyzed. That is the situation that Milton experienced and lived through as a young man. In the 1930s, medical authorities in the rural areas of the United States didn't really know what to do with a very ill boy like Milton. They simply helped his mother make a bed in the kitchen so he could be near her as she worked. And there he lay, day after day, watching his mother at daily tasks and busy with a newborn baby and a toddler. Milton wished desperately to be able to move, and longingly watched and observed his newborn sister raising her head and lowering it. Because of his deep desire to regain his own mobility, he began to imagine himself being able to do that simple move. And, surprisingly, after a few visualizations, he experienced some faint sign of movement in his neck muscles. With glee, he visualized again and again and got more movement. He realized he was onto something. He now had a path. He could do it. He began a daily routine, hour after hour, observing his baby sister and becoming familiar with her movements. He kept doing exactly what he saw her do in his mind's eye. Gradually, he regained muscle movement for himself. He learned to do what it takes. Month after month, he continued with his daily visualization. As the baby learned to raise her hands, kick her legs, and so on, he practiced her techniques mentally. Then, as his abilities to move his body increased, he practiced physically. This he found difficult, but possible with visualization. 2 years later, after rigorous visualization and step-by-step practice, Milton was able to walk using 2 canes. The doctors considered it a miracle. He considered it hard work. He had learned to do what it takes. According to current authorities, Milton had rebuilt his damaged nerve pathways by using new brain territory. Some equated his new abilities to what babies are able to do if they have experienced brain damage before the age of 6 months. Milton noticed that the process required asking himself key questions, while he visualized again and again. He stimulated motivation at every level of brain and body. The result for Milton was twofold. He not only regained a large degree of his lost capability, but created the opportunity to deeply understand the power of awareness, observation, question asking, purpose exploration, visualization, and rapport. These well-practiced understandings gradually allowed him first to walk, then to finish high school, and later to begin a highly successful and creative medical career. He had acquired robust capacities to observe, question, and follow inner cues. Capacities that most people never develop, even over a lifetime. Only we can determine our new beginnings and do what it takes to create them. Develop the power of awareness. Do what it takes. I want to thank you so much for sharing this time with me. It really means a lot to me. Maybe just put in the chat. What does this story bring up for you? What are you taking away from this story? Even if you've heard it before, I find that just like you can never cross the same river twice, we experience stories like this differently. It tells us different things. I have been reading this story so many times now. It tells me something different every time. I take something different away from it. I get some spark from it every time. What is that for you? And what is your new beginning? What new beginning might you create right now? It doesn't have to be changing the world. It doesn't have to be something grand. What fire can you light or rekindle right now? Not because it's the right time or because it's opportune right now, but because you decide that that's what's most important in your life right now. And if you like, feel free to share. The declaration has an enormous amount of power. By putting that out there and sharing that with us, you'll make it even more real than it is already. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that one opportunity to create a new beginning for yourself, obviously, is to experience coach training online if you haven't already, and to experience in person what coach training is about instead of just hearing about it. Those dates that are coming up are 28th of October at 6 p.m. Pacific time and 12th November at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So don't miss out on that if you haven't experienced that already. And if you have taken I'm not supposed to call it that. If you have taken the art and science of coaching in the past, then, I'm not giving anything away here, but sometimes things change. Change is inevitable. And things get developed and get updated and get even more powerful. And just keep your eyes open for things of that nature. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, day, or rest of the morning. And I will either see you next week or coming up a week after that for our next episode of Erickson Live. Keep changing the world one conversation at a time, everybody.